Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I am joined by Alex, who is the number one most recommended LinkedIn board advisor. Alex and I have had the pleasure of speaking and meeting about one or two times so far. And yeah, really excited to get into this episode. Alex, how's it going, my friend?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the invite. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, you are the first guest of 2025 that we're recording, and
Wow, I
I'm
feel
wearing the
special. No,
and
no,
I'm
no one
wearing
else was available, yeah.
Well, actually, I'm actually having to slow down a little bit because this episode, because we're recording now 10th of January, this will be the last episode of Q1 that we'll actually release. I said to people that I'm going to slow down a little bit because otherwise I'm going to feel quite bad if I record multiple more podcasts and then they're coming out in bloody June. It's just a bit. But yeah, I'm wearing my thickest possible jumper today because I don't know what it's like where you are. I mean, you're also wearing a lovely jumper, but it was -5 degrees this morning.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was like where
yeah,
you are.
yeah. Still frost on the lawns where I am as well. So yeah, it's not nice and cold, but that just means we're on our way to summer.
Yeah. Do you know what though? I actually, and we'll get into it in a second, but I actually love when it's a little bit sunny and really, really cold. When it's like raining and just like windy. Oh, I
Yeah,
just can't bloody
yeah,
stand it.
absolutely, absolutely. I agree. Where I'm very fortunate, there's lots of lovely hills, so I do lots of hill walking. And
Nice.
if it's rainy, therefore muddy, it's just not very enjoyable. But when
Yeah.
it's crisp under feet and blue sky overhead, even if it's freezing cold, put on the right clothes, fantastic. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Well, look, Alex, before we get into the episode properly, for people that may not know who you are, what you do, your background, etc., and how you became the number one recommended board advisor on LinkedIn, give us a little bit of an introduction to you and your sort of background.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll go back in time if that's okay, and then I'll kind of leap forward into the future.
Hmm.
I'll try and keep it relatively brief. So yeah, actually, originally I wanted to be a sports commentator.
Okay.
So nothing really to do with business as such. Something to do with cricket or football was my absolute dream. But unfortunately, to do that in the olden days, you had to do a traditional journalist degree. So I
Mhm.
went on a journalist course, and actually there was 80 people went on it, and I got down selected the last two. And on the final part of the judgment on who was going to get down to the one who then was going to get the place, it was me and this amazing girl, been to Cambridge, super bright, intelligent, really lovely person. So I was up against it, to be frank. And the final judgment was as I was in the office, the editor came up to me and said, Alex, unfortunately, there's been a hit and run, and I want you to go and get the interview from the mother whose son, teenage son, who'd just been killed in this accident. And his final words were, don't come back to the office without him. And it was at
Jesus.
that moment I realized that all of my dreams were completely shattered about journalism and wanting to talk about how great a football match was and how someone was going down a wing and whipping it into the
Mm,
box. And I suddenly realized that there was another side to it.
mm.
And then you've coupled in the unsociable hours and then the bad pay. So then naturally I fell into recruitment. Where the story there was that I was at my final year of university, and my parents, I rang them up to say looking forward to coming home, and they went on the phone. What do you mean by that? And they said, oh, we've sold the house and we're moving country.
Oh,
And in that brief second, when I said to them, where are you moving to? They said Spain. And I thought, oh, that would be nice. And they said, and you're not coming with us. So the truth of the story was they actually said, you've got 1 month's rent, son, you're on your own.
damn.
So, and I had student debts and everything else. And
Mm,
this is actually the time where there wasn't a huge amount of graduate roles
mm,
as you came out of university. So I'd applied via a recruitment company to get a job in PR
mhm.
using my English degree. And whilst I was in the office, the MD of the business came downstairs and said, how do you fancy a job in recruitment? And I said, what the hell is recruitment? And so he explained it to me, and I had 1 month's rent. So I pretty much was forced to take it. So
Mm,
£10,000 basic, worked in an office in Harlesden, one of the lovely areas of London.
mhm.
The first week I was there was three bank jobs, none of them to do with me, I might add.
Mm,
And those days, the offices, people could smoke in them, amazingly, which is just ridiculous if you think about it these
Yeah.
days. And there were 6 people in the office, 5 people smoked, and me,
Oh, wow.
including Fag Ash Lil. We always had 2 cigarettes on the go at any one time in a pyramid of ash because she was smoking so much. And because it was in Harlesden, it was a very noisy part of London. It had triple glazing and the windows were never opened. So I literally left the office at lunchtime at the end of the day, just reeking of smoke, which of course
Oh,
as a
God.
non-smoker was horrendous.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a nightmare. Then one evening I got a headhunt call from a rec to rec, and they said we've got this job in this company in the West End. Do you fancy joining them? So I went for the interview, got offered the job, then became one of the people in the business that helped drive the company forward and built it up as part of that team, and eventually it sold.
Mm,
So that's kind of my backstory to how I fell into recruitment. And there from there, I realized how much I loved helping people. I was one of those weirdos that love management. So I love
mm,
supporting people, developing people, and taking them onwards. And so I thought, well, just replicate that with founders. So I
mm,
started advising founders, just 1 or 2 at the time. Then it just started building up. More and more
mm.
people came to me. Anyway, today I sit on the board of about 30 companies globally,
Wow.
which is split between recruitment companies and technology companies. I've chaired, well over 1,000 board meetings, so I've absorbed a huge amount of
Mm,
information about the good, the bad, and the ugly in recruitment.
mm,
I was a judge for a number of years for the Main Recruiter Awards. So again, I got to see the insides of some of the best businesses in recruitment
mm.
in the UK. And then on top of all of that, I've managed to lead 25 successful exits for other founders in recruitment. So I'd like to think that that's a good endorsement of my advice, and I'm pretty damn sure that they would agree.
Yeah.
So that's my backstory.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So what was the
It's
transition
true.
like? Yeah, I would like to think so. What was the transition like for you then, from going from, recruiter, manager, working with a business that has done a successful sale, etc., to then going and advising other founders? Like, what was that initial, like, yeah, how did that feel in your mind? What was that transition like the first time you started to actually advise someone?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it felt like a natural step because I'd gone through all of the positions in a recruitment company.
Mm,
Everything from a graduate recruiter or a rookie, all the way through to then being a team leader and a manager, directing teams that were successful, but also turning
mm,
around teams that have been unsuccessful. Then being, a board director of a company and seeing the growth from the inside, the way that those things that happened, and being part of that decision-making process. So for me, it was
mm,
just a natural next step.
mm,
However, I was actually relatively young when I first started doing that, and even though age should mean nothing,
mm.
I do remember walking into one person's office where they looked at me and they just literally said, well, "Aren't you a bit young to be a board advisor?" And I said, "Well, surely it's about the knowledge that I've got rather than how
Yeah.
old I am and the experiences that I can share." So as soon as we kind of broke through that, they started realizing that, and it's my biggest adage in life as well as in business, is that you know things I don't know, and I know
Mm,
things that you don't know. So
yeah.
if I could share things that this individual, and then obviously over time, other individuals don't know that's going to help improve them and their business, why would they not want to hear them?
Mm,
So these days, to be frank, it's not a problem because hopefully the track record speaks for itself. People want to engage with you, but when you're
mm,
first starting out, if you haven't done that specific role, people can very much pigeonhole you, and you have to kind of educate them to it. But as soon as you show them something that's going to make their life better and their business more successful, they metaphorically go from this to this, and
yeah.
that's obviously what I'm trying to achieve.
Mm. It's so interesting. When I was 22, 23 years old, I always well, I say always, from my early 20s, I always wanted to get into coaching as a full-time job. Never knew it was actually possible to do this full-time or whatever. But one of my first candidates I worked with when I was working at a company called Projectus looked at my LinkedIn profile, saw that I had 6 months experience, and then direct messaged me back after I had a qualification call with him saying, no offense, but I'd rather work with your manager, Simon, because he's got 5 years experience. You've only got 6 months. At the time, it felt like a bit of a dent in my ego. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
but then I was like, It is what it is, but I'm telling
Yeah.
you, I'm going to place that guy one day. And during the pandemic, I reached back out to him because what he was selling, there was just no chance he was going to be able to sell that product whilst they were in the pandemic. Met him for a coffee, with those COVID coffees where you can't touch
Mm.
each other, and it was weird. And I brought it up with him, and I said, "Do you remember when we first spoke back in 2016?" And you said you didn't want to work with me, and he went, "I do feel a little bit bad because,
Yeah.
like, but at the same time, it's like you were so new."
Yeah.
And for me, my career is so important. I saw your manager who had more experience. Anyway, long story short, I ended up placing him. He became a manager, and I ended up placing people within his team, and it was
Mm.
something we laughed at. So I think from my perspective, it's like there's two types of people, right? You could see that experience and go, "Dah, rah, wah," like that, or you can just
Yeah.
go, "All right, cool, like water off of the duck's back," and then just crack on.
Yeah, and there's an old adage in business, which you may have heard before, which is, I'll use that example, does someone have 5 years experience or do they have 1 year's experience repeated 5 times?
Mm,
And actually, that's something that, I see a lot in business, particularly if you're a founder of a company, because the chances are you've learned the majority of what you've learned before you've obviously set up your own company. You
mm,
then, when you set up your new company, you use that experience you've got to decide what you like and don't want. And therefore, you create your culture, your training, and everything based on your previous experiences. Now, you're then training all the people that come into your business because obviously they're all going to be more junior than you because otherwise they would be a founder of their own business. So, by definition, you're not actually ever developing or improving your company. So, sometimes when you go into founders and into companies, they've actually got 15, 20 years old experience, which they're still using, today, of which some of it's good and valid,
mm.
but a lot of things have changed, haven't they, in the
Yeah.
recruitment industry, whether that's for tech focus or otherwise, or people focus or culture focus or
Mm,
brand, social media, etc., etc. So for me, it's actually that looking for constant improvements and always
mm,
seeking out people that can help you to get there, that know things that you don't know. They're going to
mm.
help you improve your business. It comes down to the same philosophy every single time.
Yeah, that's so important. I saw a few people on LinkedIn back end of 2024 talk about when you're working with a trainer, for example, or an advisor, what are they doing to constantly better their self-improvement? And they were talking a lot about books and courses and stuff. And I always say this on the podcast, but you can see behind me, I've got books there and books all the way. I went through a period of my life where I was just constantly reading personal development books. And when I set my business up, a guy that's been sort of mentoring me for a little while now said to me, it's not what, it's who. Go out and speak to actual founders and other business owners, people in tech, people in recruitment, and learn from their mistakes. And then also go and do it and learn, like document your successes and your failures, and you'll learn so much more from that than you will from some of these books. And he said, like, you can still read books. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but he advised me that that's not the first point of call for what I was specifically doing. And now for me, I'm so grateful that I get to speak to people like yourself. Almost every single week of like the last 3 months, I was speaking to founders, senior consultants,
Mm.
top billers, other trainers, people in HR, people in diversity inclusion. And like I have just learned so much about how recruitment has evolved in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and different things that are coming into play, different tech that we use now, how AI could be useful. But the one thing I will just say on that as well, that, and I say this to everyone that I work with, is I'm a complete blend of the old school and the new school. When I
Mm.
first got into recruitment, we had a fax machine. We used to fax CVs and stuff. I'm not even that old. I'm only 31, but I
Mm.
know what it's like where you had a hard desk phone, a database, and that was it, and you just called through thousands of numbers. But the hybrid comes with, I understand the new school element of recruitment, the email marketing campaigns, automated this, that, and the other. So yeah, that's my little ramble. But yeah, you're right. Things have
Yeah,
changed an awful lot.
absolutely. Well, look, we should always be in sponge mode.
Mm,
You should always be wanting to absorb useful stuff and, let the stuff go that rubbish or is not useful for you, is not going to improve you, and then absorb the stuff that's going to make you more successful. I pride myself on keeping everything relative and up to date because otherwise it's too easy to go, yeah, but you did that back in your day, or you did that, 10
mm,
years ago, etc., etc. So, if I think about myself, not only do I sit on 20 plus staff and company board on a monthly basis, and therefore every single month I'm keeping up to date on exactly all the challenges across every single part of the business and having to give them solutions. Otherwise, why the hell am I there in
mm,
the first place? But I also mentor 5 recruiters who each bill over £1 million per annum in the current market. So these are top 1%ers. And I literally sit with them at desk listening to their calls, getting involved in their calls.
Mm,
So it's not just the strategic stuff I'm getting involved with, which is
mm,
obviously great, but it's also at the coalface and knowing, the difference between success and failure for
mm,
recruiters who are doing 100,000, 200,000, 400,000, 800,000 million, whatever it's going to be. And recently, I also did a fractional CEO role for a
mm,
recruitment company. So I was there in the office working with the team and seeing things from the inside as well as from the outside. So
mm.
for me, that's important because if I can keep abreast of everything going on, no one can ever say to me, yeah, but your experience is from yesteryear, because I'm going, well, actually, I don't really rely on that experience very much. The experience and knowledge that I really share with you is now, today.
Mm.
And that's the key bit.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to unpack a little bit more about like the $1 million, £1 million
Mm.
biller thing in a moment because I've only met a few of them, and some people that I have met have told me that fees wise are like astronomical. Like some of the fees that they are getting is what I would bill in a year when I was a recruiter, for example. But a topic I did want to bring up with yourself is because you have been advising for so many different recruitment businesses. A lot of companies that I have worked with in the last year since I've been doing my own thing and the amount of time I've been in recruitment, networking with founders, and they always ask, we're potentially looking for an advisor or a non-exec and things like that. And I think it's largely like anything in life, really. You have to get on with that person. You have to feel like you trust that person and believe like what they have can add value to your business and stuff. But from your perspective, you get people reach out to you all the time via LinkedIn and stuff when you're looking to potentially be an advisor for a recruitment business, and I think this could be very valuable for any founders or people looking to set their own business up, what is it that you look for in a business that
Mm.
potentially has potential and you go, do you know what? Yeah, this has got something here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a specific answer to me, and
Hmm.
then there's a more generic answer in terms of what makes a
Sure.
successful recruitment business or the potential to have a successful recruitment business. So look, again, just through track record and through weight of experience, I'm fortunate enough these days to pick and choose the ones I work with. But actually, there's only one thing that I really look for, and that's that they're nice people. If they're
Mm,
nice people, I'll do everything I can to help them. But if they're not, I'm not going to. And I stick to that. There was one person I actually let go after 20 minutes of our first session together because their ethics and morals did not align to mine. I'd like to say that mine are the better side of ethics and
mm,
morals, by the way, and theirs were more cowboyish, and therefore, life's too
mm,
short. I don't need to, and I don't want to work with those types of individuals. So, from a personal perspective, nice founders, great.
mhm,
If they're not nice founders and not nice people, then there's other people out there better placed, to go and
mm,
have conversations with, and they're not me. In terms of a more sort of generic, broader brush thing, I think there are two key things that are going to make a recruitment company successful from a high level, and then
mm.
obviously we can go into a bit more detail underneath if you like. And that is people and niche.
Okay.
So if they're the right people and they've got the right team on board,
Mm,
then they're more likely to be successful. If they're in the right niche alongside that, then they're even more likely to be
mm,
successful. However, if you get the right people but in the wrong niche, there's probably trouble at mill. And if
mm,
you get the opposite of that, where you've got the wrong people but the right niche, you're also probably not going to be as successful. So if you've got the right person leading it and the right senior management team helping to drive the business forward, no matter whether you're small or large,
mm.
and you're in the right niche, of course, you are far likely to be more successful. So for me, I think that's the starting point. So I don't know, as obviously someone from your particular background in terms of learning and development, if you wanted to sort of ask some questions around that first, and then I can go into a bit more detail about some other things.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to say actually on that, it's very similar to what my approach was like when I've set my own thing up because I am technically advising, but I'm not necessarily displaying myself as a said advisor, so to speak. I'm more coming in and helping develop both the leaders and the recruiters within the business. But I've said this once before on the podcast that one of my first ever clients that I worked with last year, it was a referral from one of the girls that was a recruiter there, and I trained her. She put my details forward to the founders. And when I went into their offices, they asked me, what else do you need to know from us? And I said, what are your values? And they all kind of looked at each other and went, oh, it's on the website. I went, okay, what are your
Mm-hmm.
values? And they were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
honesty, professionalism, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, cool. How do you actually express them day to day via like, your interactions, your behaviors internally and externally? And I could just see them kind of look at each other like no one has ever asked them that question before.
Yeah.
And one of the founders, it was two MDs, literally just looked at me and was like, "What? Why? No one's ever asked us that. Why have you
Mhm.
asked us that?" And I was like, I don't want to say bad things about past employers and stuff, but I've worked with some people that were not necessarily the nicest and more sort of
Yeah.
on the cowboy side. And I don't
Yeah.
want to go and consult for a business and get involved in a 10, 12 week course when I don't believe in what you stand for. And you're just genuinely not sort of nice people. So I need to
Yeah.
understand what that actually is. And as soon as I said that, both the associate directors, you could just see they had a big smile on their face because they realized that I wasn't just in this to just get some money. Do you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
in this because I really care about what I do. I care about the recruiters, and I want to genuinely work with nice people.
Yeah. Do you know what? There's too much box ticking. That's
Mm,
what we're talking about here. So someone's gone, do you know what? We should have some values and a mission statement and
mm,
and we'll put it into our pack or PDS when we're trying to attract recruiters or people to join us. And,
mm.
part of our career development program. And, we do this, but they don't believe it because if
Yeah.
they believed it, they would have instantly got the answer. And culture comes from the top. So by
Mm,
definition, if they really believed it, they would have made sure that's a non-negotiable, and every single employee within their business, bar none, would be able to say exactly what they are and why they are, and
mm.
be able to demonstrate that they've done it or the reasons why they're doing it. Because without that, it's just paying lip service to it.
Yeah.
So, I would say either don't bother or do it properly.
Mm.
But really, I'd say just do it properly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's a process. So great, come up with some words. Those words have got to have meaning. Those meanings
Mm.
have got to be backed up. If you can back it up, great. Then make sure it's driven through the company as a culture. If it's not going to do that, then you're paying lip service to it. And guess what? If that was a client meeting, a £10 million account, tricky time in the recruitment
Hmm.
market, £1 million account, you really needed to win that. And then one of your recruiters gets asked that question in the meeting and they can't answer it. Guess what's going to happen? You ain't going to get that business. So, there's no point even running that risk. If you're going to do it properly.
Yeah, it's so true. When I worked at a company called Projectus, like some of the best years I ever had in my career, the best time, most fun, earned a load of money, etc. We used to have our values everywhere, all over the office. And whenever I would finish a phone call, because I got into studying NLP, sorry, when I was 27 in 2017, sorry, so I was probably about 27 actually, and we learned about how to basically formulate your own values and understanding how that works in business as well as personal, etc., and in a coaching sense. And I would always use that in a client call with clients and say, look, my values are X, Y, and Z that kind of coincide with our company values, and this is why you should work with us, etc. And the MD would always stand up and clap when I'd done that on a phone call in front of the whole business, and everyone turned around and he'd just do the whole slow clap and be like, that is what it's all about. And it's like,
Yeah.
tell everyone what happened in that call. And I said, oh, I told them about this, that, and the other. I've got a meeting next week, and I've told them that our fees are X and that we only work retained and they're going to come in the office, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just really reassuring for me as a senior recruitment consultant at the time to have the founder and the MD but reinforce that type of behavior within the business. And constantly, everyone was reminded of what our values were. And it wasn't just words like honesty and professionalism,
Yeah.
but underneath it, it was what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
How do you actually demonstrate you're being honest? Sure, professional. What does that actually mean to us? And
Yeah.
how do we
Absolutely.
demonstrate that internally and externally? And I think,
Absolutely.
for me, and certainly it sounds like for yourself, when we work with businesses, I don't want to see lip service values. I don't want to just see honesty, professionalism. I need to
Absolutely.
understand what that actually means.
And then to me, there's another final step beyond that because I can sit there and say integrity is important to me. I
Mm,
can then see and give my word onto how and why I think that's important to me. I
mm,
might even be able to give you something which sounds believable and is proof of why that's important to me. However, there's nothing like a third party endorsement to then back up that. So
yeah.
actually, if you have values and your mission statement say, here's the 5 things that we believe in, these are non-negotiables, you should make sure that you've got 5 candidates and 5 clients who have given you referrals, testimonials, recommendations, specifically proving those things. Because
Mm,
that way you're joining all of the dots all the way along, and it doesn't become I'm saying this, I'm saying this. It's actually, look, we do it, and here's someone
mm.
else, name, company, title, backing it up and proving that we actually do it.
Yeah. Love that. So you said something just before I butted in when we were talking about working with a business that has potential. You said about
Mm.
the people, the specialism
Yeah.
slash the niche, and there's something I think I don't know if you asked me a question or if there was something that you wanted me to speak about before.
No, no, I think the final point I guess I've got on that, well, there's 2 points.
Mm,
One, which is, everything that gets driven, you're giving the example from the company.
hmm
And these were the things that we believed in. These were the things that you uncovered. These are the things that the reasons why you said these are the values of our company. So you
mm,
kind of went to the further length of detail, which is great. And the MD or the founder said, no one's really done that before. Isn't that awesome?
mm,
But the question really that founder and other founders should be asking themselves is, why has that not happened? So if you really think about it, because of the culture comes from the top, or it should do,
mm,
actually, if the individuals at the top, they don't every day, and I mean every day, have the
mm,
passion, the drive, the forward thinkingness, the plan,
mm,
the open mindedness to and proactively seeking out new learning and ways of improving their
mm,
company, then again, it just becomes lip service. So
mm,
these are simple things that people like because they get classic wood for the trees. You're running a business, you might still even be working your desk, the market's tough, your focus is on delivering revenue and bringing cash to the business. Of course it is. I get all of that. But if you're looking at any point to improve it or to expand it, because otherwise you're just going to go backwards, you need to start asking these questions. You
mm.
need to start improving all of these particular things. And actually, and this is hopefully one of those little golden nuggets that people can take away from this particular conversation, is
Mhm.
actually the secret to success in recruitment or any business is actually getting the right second in command. Because by definition, the right second in command proactively will go to the founder of the business or the MD or CEO of the board and go, I've got the plan. You don't need to worry about it. So
Mm,
it's a 3-year plan. Here's the detail. Here's what we're going to do. Here's exactly what it needs to look like. I've reverse engineered the entire process. I've gone through every single thing. I've got a financial plan. I've got all the reasons why it won't work, all the solutions why it will work.
mm,
Don't worry about it. I'll manage it. And every single month, you can hold me accountable by these milestones. And
mm,
they then go and deliver it. That's the
mm.
secret to success because you've got that person, they will drive the business for you and they will make it successful. So another question founders should ask is that if we want to be a successful business in the future, have I got that person on board? Is there someone who I need to develop to become that person?
Mm,
Or do I need to bring that person in? If you've been going for a number of years and you've got that person in and you're staying static and you want to expand, I would argue it's not the market's fault. It's not the fact you can't attract recruiters' fault. It's
mm,
not the candidate's fault. It's not anyone else's fault. It's you're accountable because you haven't got the right person or you haven't developed the person with the
mm.
right skills that they are able to do that. So to me, it's a massive win and it's a massive thing that everyone should be focused on.
That's the first time I've heard that on this podcast, to be fair, but that makes an awful lot of success. Looking back at my career working with businesses and having working closely with founders, because I've always pretty much worked at startups, SMEs, and then they've brought in a sales director to lead that, and then they come up with the plans. That's always been where it's worked really, really well. What you've just said, I want to ask you a question about this because
Mm,
I see so many, and I'm going to talk about the market, right? And inverted commas, the market, right? Because
mm,
that's such a broad statement. And I'm in a WhatsApp group chat with a load of different founders across tech and recruitment and stuff. And someone said about how they're really struggling to pull jobs and they do like tech sales recruitment.
mm.
And one of my first ever clients was in tech sales. And after like a couple of weeks, well, or months working with me, they were flooded with new jobs. And they were like, is anyone else having this issue in 2024 where the market's really, really tough? The market, it just,
Yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
just said, like, well, every single business I'm working with, and not to sound big-headed, approached me because they're struggling to pull jobs and now they're struggling to fill all the jobs. And we're talking about 180 model. And I had conversations with them, and a lot of these people, oh, but it's just there's a lot of redundancies. Oh, there's a lot the economy, and oh, this and that and the other. And I don't know. I'm a little bit in the middle of it because I feel like during the pandemic it was different
Yeah.
because literally we're all locked in our homes, and I can understand like why you weren't able to recruit. The
Mm,
'08 financial crisis, I understand. There's specific things like that I get, but just the market just in general, like that generalist phrase, I don't know, it just kind of
Yeah.
makes me, I scratch my head a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, well, look, again, either through experience because I've seen at other companies, or because it's the way that I'm wired.
Mm,
I'm always looking for solutions. I mean,
mm,
again, you kind of, it's obvious to a certain extent, but people don't pay you good money to sit in board meetings to tell them that they're doing really well.
yeah.
They want you to tell them how they can improve. That's why they're paying the
Mm,
money. Otherwise, they're just throwing it down the toilet. So by definition, I'm always looking for those improvements, those solutions, those things you can drive things forward. And if someone is having a bad month or a bad quarter, guess what I'm doing? I'm not sitting there just kind of looking down and going feeling sorry for myself, or letting them say things like, well, it's the market. I'm
mm,
doing is going, right, well, okay, I understand that there are macro conditions that we can't control. It'd be amazing if we could, but we can't.
yeah.
But what can we control? Let's look at those things. Let's focus on them, and let's try some different things. And either I've got something that I can immediately say, try this. It's a new shiny toy. I know
Mm,
another company's using it. Go and give it a go. Let's see if it works for you. We can refine it, measure, refine it. I'm a big believer in data to kind of
mm,
prove it. Or secondly, I describe it as locking myself in a darkened room, where I will
mm,
lock myself in a darkened room and go, right, what's that biggest challenge? The number one biggest challenge that's stopping the companies that I'm advising, or recruitment companies, to be accelerating growth or hitting their targets at that particular moment. So let's use the example that you just gave. So we're
mm,
not getting enough quality jobs in right now.
mm,
Okay, so first of all, we need to know what quality is. But assuming everyone does, then I'll go, right, well, here's some ideas. And if they don't work, what I'll do is I'll go, right, well, I've got 20 odd boards that I'm advising, and they've
mm,
got 1,000 recruiters across all of those big boards, plus all the other ones that I network with that come to me for bits of advice now and again.
mm,
I'm going to spend time in my time in a darkened room, and I'm going to think about nothing else than new creative ideas to solve that one challenge. Then, once I come up with what I believe is the best idea, I'll go back to those companies and I'll go, right, you're now my guinea pigs.
mm,
But let's trial some things. I've got this concept here. We might need to refine it slightly for their market, their niche, the way that they work. That's fine. And then we go out, then we do it. Now I've got 20 odd companies all trialing these new ideas. And obviously, if they start working, then we know that's the one that we should
mm,
focus on until such time that it stops working. So they know that I've got their back, because I'm always creatively thinking about new ideas, not the same old, same old. We've done this in the past,
yeah.
but wait a second, those things aren't working now. So there's no point just
Mm,
going on doing 1,000, sales calls of the same old thing, which is now not working. We need
mm,
to come up with something different. And there's very few people out there who are challenging the status quo. Every situation where I get to that point, I'm always thinking of solutions. So for me, I understand that there are macro issues and sometimes
mhm,
cash flow issues. I'm a realist. I've built businesses myself. I know what it's like. But at the same time, there are typically solutions, and either
mm,
there are solutions that other people have already done, therefore they've been proven, and they just don't know about them. But I've got the good fortune I speak to lots of companies, so I do know about them. Or I will come up with something creative because I'm not in amongst it like they are. So they
mm,
are worried about the day in, the day out. I can then go away, have that clear thinking space, and go, right, okay, how about this idea, and this idea, and this idea?
yeah.
So if there's anyone listening to this who are struggling, particularly with something like winning new business at the moment,
Mm,
then I can assure you that mentoring £5 million billers who are winning business constantly in
mm,
some tough markets as well, and very saturated markets, there's a reason why they're doing that. So there will be
mm.
ideas that I'll be able to share with them.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I said earlier that I wanted to pick you up a little bit on the £1 million biller
Mm.
topic, and obviously you've just mentioned it just there. Um, you know, I, it's interesting, really, isn't it? Because there are some businesses out there that are struggling, and it'd be interesting to understand from your perspective why you think they might be struggling on on winning new business in a
Mm.
saturated market or whatever they would describe the market as. But these £1 million billers that you're coaching and working with, what specifically are they doing, even if they are in said saturated markets, etc., to go
Mm.
and win good business and new business?
Yeah, so I actually did an exercise on this specifically because if I
Mm,
could, take the syringe into the
mm,
£1 million biller, take it out, and then put it into all the other billers, then guess what? All the other billers are likely to be more successful. So I
mm,
actually did quite a lot of time spending with them about analysing the way that they worked, but also mentoring and coaching them, because even those individuals could be improved and were improved. I mean, one of them was
mm,
doing 900,000. Actually, very good recruitment skills, and actually only a few things that I could help on that side. But time management was dreadful. So I actually did a
mm,
one-to-one time management coaching session with them. And not only did they go from 900,000 to 1.4 million the next year, which she attributed directly to that advice, but also she got an hour back of her time every day.
Oh
Now
wow.
she decided to go down the gym with that. Personally, I wouldn't have bothered, but each to their own. So again, if you look at the key things are that, and I'd say the first one is accountability. They are accountable for everything that goes right, but everything that goes wrong on their desk. They never blame their colleagues, the market, clients, candidates, in-house recruiters, technology, etc., etc. They just don't accept it. They go, right, it's up to me. If those things are happening and that's reality, I need to do something different. So what is that different thing? Either I know it or I'm going to seek out help to go and get that advice and those new ideas. So for me, that's the main thing, because there's too many people out there. And actually, the problem quite often comes from senior managers who are they're in an open office or in their management meetings are saying things like, oh, it's a tough market out there. But what do you expect? You're giving people ready-made excuses, then they don't hit target to go, well, it's a market condition. You don't want that. You're going to go, well, we're realistic. It is a tough market, but we don't care about that. We're going to come up with solutions. So what are we going to do as a team now to make sure that we come up with that? Every person come to the next meeting with a new idea that we can then do to take business forward. No idea is too silly, because you never know where it might spark another idea. So that accountability, I think, is really important. Of course, they've got that hunger and that drive. They do go the extra mile. And I'm not going to say that those individuals are working from, 10 o'clock in the morning to midday, and that's 2 days a week. The reality is they do put in the extra time, but obviously they get the extra rewards off the back of it. They are highly process driven, very efficient with their time, always focus on the priorities. And because of that, when they get to the end of the day, even if there are things they haven't done, they don't beat themselves up about it, because they know they always did their priorities. And that's whether you work 2 hours a day or 12 hours a day, it doesn't matter. What matters is that in that time, you're as efficient as possible, and that you focus on the most important priorities, and they're the ones that are always getting done. So they're great with their time management. They go the extra mile in terms of learning their market, their knowledge, push themselves out of their comfort zone. They will go to events. One of these individuals is autistic, and actually they are naturally quite a quiet person. Doesn't stop them. They go out to client meetings, they go to events, they host webinars. I mean, they push themselves the extra mile. Now, if someone like that can do it, and I can speak from the heart here because my oldest son's autistic, so I understand exactly what this is like. So if someone like that can push themselves out there and then be a million-pound biller, virtually anyone can. They really can. So for me, there's a lot of different ingredients within there. And I think the final part is every 3 months, and this is part of the work that I do with them, but it's also them as well, they have to do it, is they do a personal SWOT analysis on themselves. Now, this is great. And I love
this.
So they literally put a bunch of bullet points, and normally on a quarterly basis, I then review it with them. So there's that little bit of accountability. And they're constantly thinking, well, what are my strengths? But how could I improve? Where could I go? And I hate the W in SWOT, because obviously it's weakness, it's pretty negative. It should be areas for improvement, but that's a rubbish acronym. So, so areas for improvement, and then what opportunities and threats. So they're constantly, every quarter, thinking, how can I improve every single bit of what I do? Candidates, clients, time management, the way that I work, my processes. And then if I can improve a few things, great, 10% better forward, next quarter, next quarter, next quarter. So for me, that's another biggie that makes them stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with a client I'm working with. He's 26 years old, managing director of a business, oversees like 20 plus people, has full P&L responsibility, and he still bills consistently for the last several years 500k a year in a market where the fees, I think his average, I can't remember, well, I can't do the maths right now, but he done 85 deals in 2024. Whilst being the managing director of this business. And I had a conversation with him as we were debriefing when I was last in their office. And I said, I can't remember the third one, but Chris Williamson on his podcast was talking about high achievers having 3 common traits. One of them was an undeniable, what was it, like a maniacal level of focus, sorry. So their focus levels were just so insane that If
Yeah.
they were doing a sprint on something and they had to focus on something for an hour, nothing in the world could distract them. They're just going to be focused. The other one was having someone to prove wrong. So they said most of the top CEOs, billionaires have a predominantly a father, for example, that didn't give them
Mm.
enough love. So they're like, I'm going to prove him wrong and I'm going to get their love. Or in
Yeah.
some other people's instances, they got fired or their boss has been an arsehole to them. So they're going to go off, do their own thing and prove them wrong. I can't remember what the third one is, but I can put a link in the description for this. But it sounds very similar to some of the things that you were saying there for a lot of
Yeah,
top
well,
billers.
and going back to the start of my story, when I said that, 1 month's rent, you're on your own, son. For me, it was financial independence.
Mm,
It was, I didn't want to be dependent on anyone else, and that shook it home to me. It really did. So you had to be successful. You had to be drive. And I was also uber competitive. So, there was
mm.
that it was driving me forward as well. But it wasn't competitive against others. It was either a friendly competitiveness or it was with myself.
Yeah.
So again, that's accountability. I drive
Mm,
myself on, and in fact, these days, do I really need to do what I do? Frank, I don't. I'm in a fortunate position. I choose to do it, and I'm really passionate still about
mm,
helping other people. And the day that I stop doing that is the day I stop it. But I'm driven to help as many people as possible. So if I
mm,
had 10 people that I was a board advisor for, Ned, I'd be thinking, well, how can I help 15? How can I help 20? And actually, I've
mm,
evolved my business model by challenging the way that I do things to enable me to help as many people as possible.
mm. Yeah, well, going back to what you just said there, I think looking back at some of the top performers I've ever worked with, accountability is so huge. And to be honest with you, Alex, it's kind of a bit of a pet peeve of mine when I work with new recruitment businesses and the recruiters will sit here and say, "Oh, you don't understand. The reason why I can't do BD is because our system is so slow." Or, "Oh, the clients in our market, they're just dicks. Like they're really not very nice people." And, "Oh, the reason why I can't do this." And I'm just sat there and I'm scratching my head and I'm like, you're like, unless you change that mindset, you're never going to be successful in anything you do. Because any successful person, and I'm very fortunate that since doing this podcast, I've spoken to dozens and dozens of hyper successful people and very passionate people. None of the founders I've ever spoken to have sat there and complained about anything. They're very much along the same type of mindset as yourself. As yeah, sure, if the market is tough, if it's super saturated, or since COVID it's been difficult to pull new business, we'll find opportunities and solutions. It's as simple as that. If our
Yeah,
system's slow, we'll find a workaway around it. If the
yeah,
if
yeah,
the hard desk phone that we have here is really slow, I'll use my mobile. If the emails are down, it's fine. I'll LinkedIn message. If LinkedIn's not working, I'll WhatsApp. Like there's always an opportunity, and that's what I've seen outside of recruitment as well, but especially in recruitment, the top performers will. If there's a problem, they either find a solution or just go round the problem and make sure they're just trying to achieve their said end goal, basically.
yeah. One of the weakest areas of the recruitment sector is partnership model.
Mm,
So actually, there's very few recruiters or recruitment companies who think if my decision maker is, let's just pick a random example, a financial director,
mm,
what other suppliers want to be talking to that same FD? So, is it people that are providing financial training or courses? Is it people that provide financial reports or information?
mm,
Is it people that run events for financial directors, etc.? So they've already got that relationship with that individual. So if you can then start becoming that partnership model with those individuals, then quid pro quo, you can start, through karma, helping each other.
mm,
And they can make some introductions to people that you couldn't get the introduction to. Now, I can
mm.
tell you right now, guarantee this is right, that the number one way of winning business in any market, in any sector, in the history of time, is referrals. If
Mm,
one person refers you to another person, they're more likely to take your call, they're more likely to respond to your email, they're more likely to
100%.
meet you, they're more likely to do business with you. Not saying they're going to, but it's about raising those chances, percentage chances. So if you've got people who are already suppliers to your client base or potential client base, why aren't you networking with them? Aren't you building that partnership model with them? Now, in technology, this happens all the time. And, I sit across both camps, both in tech and
Mm,
recruitment, like yourself, and when you were talking before. So for me, why isn't it that people are taking that model from another sector, being smart, asking
mhm.
questions, seeing what else is out there, and putting that into the recruitment sector? Now, a lot of people think, oh, it takes too much time. But what you don't want to be is in a year's time having the same conversation. What you want to be doing in a year's time is said, we knew a year ago that the BD was the problem. So what we did, we started a partnership model. So we wrote down the top 50 target clients. We looked at the decision makers. We thought, who also is trying to deal with them? Let's find out who those suppliers are. Let's go and build that network. Let's go and run events with them, webinars with them, etc., and then we'll approach it. So suppliers to recruitment founders do this all the time. The banks, the financial institution, the accountancy firms, the technology companies, the apps, the job boards, all these type of things. They are doing this all the time to win the founders' business. But the founders don't seem to have joined the dots and say, wait a second, why aren't we doing this to win business for our company? So for me, I think there's a real opportunity that most recruitment companies could be way, way better on partnership.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that. I'm so lucky that my first proper job in recruitment was recruiting nurses, because that's how you built your desk. You can go on the job boards when you're new because you don't have a network yet. But once you have a decent nurse come into the office that's worked in the NHS for 10 years, who's worked with dozens of agency nurses, dozens of other nurses that go back and forth between the different hospitals in that county, you just get loads of referrals. And it got to a point, Alex, where me and my best mate at work would just sit there with our feet up whilst all the trainees would be scouring through the job boards. And I'd be like, yeah, I know him. Yeah, I know her. And then you just wait and referrals will just come to you.
Absolutely. And, that's on the candidate and the client side. And I would say that a lot of recruitment companies are relatively good at that. I'm not saying they're brilliant, but they're relatively good at it.
Relatively.
In terms of they know to ask for candidate referrals. They've probably got an incentive scheme in place. It's not the way you get them, by the way, but that's just the way that they do it. So they are thinking about it. They're trying to do something. So I agree with all that. You're absolutely right. It's the lifeblood of a successful recruiter. Is either people come to them or they proactively go and get those referrals. And that's great. But that has been going on for some time, and some companies are better than others at it. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the partnership model is a whole other thing. That's nothing to do with the candidates and the clients directly. It's using third parties who've got the relationship either with those candidates and clients. And for me, that's the missing ingredient. But I agree with you. They also should be and could be a lot better at getting proactive referrals as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. What I was alluding to is the fact that became a habit of mine, not even just on the candidates and clients thing, but just overall networking and doing the partnership side. What I was kind of saying is, unfortunately, I work with businesses across a variety of different sectors, from tech to construction to healthcare, that don't even have the incentive scheme. They don't even ask the question. They've never been trained to ask for referrals. And that's just the sad thing. I'm just very grateful that it was always ingrained to me from like day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And presumably a lovely, easy win for you. Because you just go in and you can show it straight away and they go, blimey, if we can learn that straight away, what else has this person got that you can share with us?
Yeah, literally that. Well, look, there's a couple more things I wanted to run through with you. You obviously talked a lot about what you look for in a recruitment company when you're partnering. We've talked through some of the high performing traits and things like that. A lot of business owners that potentially listen to this, or people that are looking to set their own business up, every time and I'm sure you get this an awful lot as well, every single time I go to meet a recruitment startup, I ask them, why have you looked to start up your own business? And they always say, left this business, we want to set this up and sell, right? But when I sit down and say, all right, okay, what's your actual plan? Like, what things have you put in place to, for an investor to come along and go, actually, yeah, this is a worthwhile company to buy from? And more often than not, I just see the founders look at each other and go, we haven't. Why? Have you got some tips? What do we do? So from your perspective, as someone that's been doing this for a while, right? How can a recruitment business effectively scale, like properly, sustainably? Because I've worked in a business as a full-time employee where they scaled so quickly in the first 12 months, and they just crashed and burned after that 12 months because they grew way too quickly, opened up to way too many offices and stuff. So for businesses that want to grow, scale, potentially to sell, etc., what's your advice for them on how to scale but sustainably?
And a very important question. So for me, I'm slightly obsessed with what I call the 3 Ps. So people, plan, and process. So first of all, obviously, you've got to make sure you get the right people on board. Now there's stacks of stuff underneath all of that, because that's almost the end of the journey. The start of that is, well, what's your brand, your culture, what are you doing to attract people, blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, you get the right people on board. So that's an obvious one. It's recruitment. It's a people business. But then you've got to have the right plan on board. So most recruitment companies don't have a plan, or they certainly don't have a very good plan. Well, certainly there's a plan that could be improved. So, again, I've had the good fortune of otherwise have led hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planning strategy sessions for recruitment companies. And so I've kind of devised my own process on how to make these super efficient, but also ones that consistently deliver. So, getting the right plan in place. There's no point doing anything 5 years. If you're trying to raise investment, I get it. Sometimes you just have to because that's what the investor wants. But actually, anything beyond 3 years, it's so far away, it's almost untouchable. You can't really control it. Anything less than 3 years is too short term. So how can you be sure you're making the right decisions today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter, unless you've got a plan in place? So at least you've got a roadmap of where you're trying to get to. Now, of course, once you've got that, you put a line in the sand, 3 years from now, always 3 years. And then you go, well, wait, I can't touch or feel 3 years from now. So what's the point of that? The point of it is you've got a destination, which now means you can reverse engineer the entire process, like recruiters do when they go, I need to do £180,000. So my average fee is 15,000. So I need to do this many placements. So I work backwards and I look at my core activities I need to do in terms of BD, job fill ratio, those sorts of things. So people do that and they've got systems that use those to help recruiters and the senior management team do that. But actually, they don't do it enough in terms of a bigger number. So in 3 years' time, what do you want the business to look like? I don't know. I want it to be £1 million profit. Great. Well, £1 million profit means you need X amount million of GP. So how many recruiters do you need to do that? What's the average per recruiter? Then you start reverse engineering that. How many recruiters do you need? What's the org chart? When do we need to be hiring people? Who, when, in a priority order? Have we got job specs in place, et cetera, et cetera? So having the right detailed plan that's reverse engineered that gives you a monthly milestone or milestones that need to be achieved in line with what you're trying to get to, that's the key bit with planning and doing it right. And the final bit then is process. So you've got all the plan in place, but if you don't execute the plan effectively, you may as well just rip it up and throw it in the bin. So actually getting the processes right. So what should happen is that on a consistent basis, like I said before about big billers, every 3 months, reviewing what they do, doing that personal SWOT analysis. You do the same thing on your own business. Now, I actually put recruitment in a box. So recruitment in a box is I break down recruitment companies into 12 to 14 core areas, such as winning new business, account management, candidates, internal processes, so financial processes, hiring recruiters, learning and development, all these different areas. Underneath each of those areas, there should be someone or some people who every 3 months or every 6 months are challenging what you've done historically. And their job is to review, improve, and process. So I review what we've done historically. I then come up with recommendations how to improve that. And then I turn it into a process in the company, so it's now documented. So that's now our next level of improvement going forward. Now, if you do that across every single core pillar of a recruitment company, growing a recruitment company, on a 3 or 6 month basis, is your company more or less likely to improve? Obviously, it's more, isn't it?
Yeah.
So doing that alongside having the right people and the right plan means that you're putting all of those things into process, and therefore it's far more likely to be successful. Now that's from a sort of strategic and kind of operational perspective. Now, obviously, there's tons of stuff underneath all of that, which is the recognition that the best time to start all of these things that we're talking about today, because if they don't start them today or tomorrow, they'll be forgotten. I mean, you'll probably know there's a stat, isn't there, in training. 80% of what you learn goes out out your head as soon as you walk out the door. So what you do is you make sure whatever they're learning, they immediately implement it. So, of course, it works, doesn't it? Same thing. It's like all of these ideas here, people like some of them. They've got to go, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. I'm a bit busy at the moment, blah, blah, blah. These are the things that are the difference between success and failure of your recruitment company. So take hold of them, be accountable and go, right, I'm going to put the right plan in place. I'm going to put those right processes in place, but I'm going to do it immediately. I'm not going to wait and just keep constantly pushing things down the road, because that way failure, unfortunately, lies. So again, that's a very high level thing. The other thing, of course, is as soon as you start implementing these things, first of all, you can do it in a very controlled process. You can say there are 14 core areas of our business. Let's put them into priority order for our business. Number one, winning new business, as an example. It's quite common in the current market. It's a winning new quality business. So that's the number one priority. Okay, so for the next month, we'll review, make improvements, and make a process that one area. Then we'll move on to the next one. And then we'll move on to the next one, the next, and so you don't have it to all day. So you can do it in a control process in priority order, which means there's no rush, there's no urgency, there's no knee-jerk reactions. And I said that quite stressfully because a lot of people are very knee-jerk, particularly when their company is struggling. So this way you're forward planning against a 3-year plan. And now you're starting to go, well, every month I've now got almost like a project management tool that says this month we're going to focus on number one priority, winning business. Let's get the greatest minds in the business. Let's give them the right tools. Go away, think about it, come back and improve it, make it a process. Boom, train it for the rest of the company. Next one, next one, next one, next one. So I say the companies that get that right, and there are very, very few of them who do that. And until I tend to go into those companies, most of them have never even heard of that in terms of a systematic process. But the ones where I have worked with them for a while and they get that right, it's a beautiful thing to see. It really is. When you see it in practice, everyone in the company is involved. Everyone's now accountable. No one's pointing fingers at the bosses saying, why haven't you done things? It's like, well, actually, I feel part of the ownership and part of the reason why the company's not being successful is down to me. So I need to step up my game. Everyone's getting involved in the business. It's just an incredible thing. And those businesses are the ones that tend to thrive, even in the last 12 to 18 months, where a lot of companies have been struggling. The vast majority of the companies, certainly that I'm advising, are going that way because they've got the right processes in place.
Yeah, love that. I really like what you said about having everyone involved in the different departments coming with fresh new ideas to challenge what they've been doing. And, I do understand when people say, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But, it's not a case of fixing it. It's a case of like, if we've been doing this exact same thing for 2 years, especially in recruitment, from my experience, that sometimes what seems to be working one day will just genuinely fall off a cliff and you'll miss out. So if you're not looking at ways to innovate and maybe just add slightly to it, you can lose quickly to your competitors.
Absolutely. And John, I 100% agree with that. You'll stay stagnant or you'll go backwards, or someone else will come up with a bigger idea and a better idea and they'll supersede you. I actually banned the C word in the offices that I advise. You're thinking, oh, which one's that? I'm not going to swear. Change, because it's not about change. Change is a negative. People don't like change. Oh, we're not sure about this. It's the I word. It's improvement. You're constantly looking to improve every area of your business so you don't stagnate or go backwards, or you get that classic, someone comes from over here behind your shoulder and supersedes and takes all of your business from you because you were just looking forward and you weren't not even looking forward. You're just looking right in front of your nose. You weren't looking forward enough, in fact.
Yeah. There was something that I was going to say. That was it. So you've given so much there around what to do to scale effectively. And if companies are looking to get external investment or looking to sell, whatever it is, right? You've talked a lot about the positives and how to implement those things. Maybe from your experience, or maybe some advice for people on things not to do. It could be a case of quite literally the opposite, but perhaps maybe what have you seen from recruitment businesses where, like what I explained a moment ago, where that company I worked for scaled so quickly and then just all of a sudden 1, 2, 3 sales directors left, and then all of a sudden basically everyone was gone from the business. From your experience, your history, like what is some examples where companies have scaled completely ineffectively and unsustainably?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that you can do wrong. And someone asked me recently, it was actually a big event I was speaking at, and they kind of put the hand up from the crowd, and they said that they heard that there was no shortcut to success in building a company. Now, that's a common misconception, because actually, of course, there is. Go and speak to people that have already done it before. Because if they've done it before and they've been successful, and they've been successful multiple times, then you can learn the good, the bad, and the ugly for them. Where did it go wrong? Find that out. Don't just ask, were they successful? Find out all the reasons why it was unsuccessful and what they did about it. Because then, guess what? If you've got that advice and you're looking now forward, you're not going to make those mistakes. So I would say that 90 to 95% of everything that's gone wrong in a company has gone wrong before, thousands of times across loads of business. So go and find the people where it's gone wrong, but then they've turned it around to be successful. There's no point finding out people who've gone wrong and they haven't got the answers, obviously. Likewise, go and talk to the people who've been successful, because they are going to give you the shortcut to success, because they can tell you all the reasons why they were successful and all the mistakes they made and how to avoid them. Now, you don't have any of that stress. Those problems never happen. or which could save you, by the way, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds leaving your business. It can stop all your key people leaving if you've got all of those ideas in place. But just importantly, it gives you that comfort of knowing that you're making good decisions because other people have made decisions before and they've been proven to be successful. So the areas where it goes wrong, I mean, there are just so many of them. But if I look at some of the key ones, if I think of the example of the companies that have successfully sold, so the 25 odd that I've advised, because they've obviously been the ones that have achieved something that at the end, someone wanted to give them millions of pounds or tens of millions of pounds for. So they've obviously got it right eventually. And you kind of look at the things that they have done to make sure that those problems aren't there. So they've built a great senior management team. They've got the right second in command. They've tied in those individuals. They get them involved in the decision-making process. There's a lot of transparency, and I'm massive on transparency in companies. Don't pay lip service. If you scurry off into a little darkened room having management and board meetings and then come back and don't share what's been talked about with the team, guess what they're going to think? Particularly if you come in with a long face. So, you've got to redact some of the information, but share with them what you can from those meetings. Get everyone involved in it. Get everyone involved in the recruitment in a box idea. Everyone's accountable for helping improve the business, getting them to rotate through different parts of the business. So everyone's got new ideas they can share to improve the company and make it a great culture. Now, anyone can say that, but actually live it and breathe it, do something. What are you doing to know that your culture is better than your competitors who want your star recruiters? So how do you know what your competitors are doing? Find out what they're doing. Make sure that yours is always improving. Learn from people coming in the interview process. What do they really love? What are the top 3 things they love about working at their current company? Now, you do that across 50, 100, 200 people a year in interviews. That's a huge amount of information on people saying, oh, we did this, this, this. And they don't even have to come from a recruitment company. They could have come from any industry, any sector. And you're absorbing all of that information and constantly improving and making sure your business is better. Plus then seeking out the ideas and knowledge from people who've already been through it and hopefully been through it multiple times, because the more experience they got, obviously, the better. Then you put those things in place, and you're far more likely to be successful. You're far less likely to make mistakes that other people have already made. Now, there's tons of stuff underneath the hood from a day-to-day recruiter level that I could go into about why recruiters aren't winning new business, why they aren't filling jobs, why more companies are turning to in-house recruitment teams rather than using external recruitment teams, et cetera, et cetera. But I suspect that might be a podcast for another day, part 2. But for now, there's so much, and I could literally go on for hours.
Yeah, no, do you know what I love about you, Alex? This is the second time I've actually met you, but you're so passionate, and this is what I said to you and when we first met. A lot of people I know that have done podcasts stopped doing the podcast because they were getting guests on because they had like almost their own personal quota to hit. They had to do an episode a week, and they would get people on, and believe me, I sound like a bit of an arsehole when I say this, but I've had some people that have said, "Oh, let me be on your podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm really, really busy at the minute. So yeah, just drop me a message in 2025," and I hope that they don't, because like the topics they want to talk about, from my perspective, so boring, and they just cut their videos on LinkedIn so boring. There's no passion. Like if you're passionate about something, like I had Brad Plax on the podcast, the episode. Well, when this airs, it would be the first episode of 2025 that came out, and he's equally like yourself and another non-executive director. He's the chairman of Camino Partners, and when I first met him, when I was looking at setting up my coaching business, similar to what you were saying, I'm just trying to ask for so much advice. Like, what do I need to do? Where do I start? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, trust me, you're going to be all right. And I was like, everyone keeps telling me this, Brad, but what do they mean? I don't feel like I'm going to be all right. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any, I don't have a father figure. Why do you think I'm going to be all right? And he went, because you've got passion and drive. If you're really passionate about something and you're really driven, you'll make it work. And I can just tell that you're going to be a grafter and you're going to make it work. And like 3 other senior people in the recruitment and business space said that to me. And I was like, huh. So this whole passion thing is not as overrated as what I once thought.
And you know what? He's right and you're right. Of course, it's absolutely important. But without a plan and then executing that plan, it's great. You're a really lovely person. Let's have a nice chat. But I'm not going to spend any money with you. So being a really lovely person and having a plan and executing that plan and then delivering the proof behind it, so more and more people give you those recommendations and testimonials, etc., on LinkedIn or whatever else it's going to be. Of course, that is where it needs to get to.
Yeah. Were
And it
you
has done for
always,
you, by the
yeah,
way.
were you always quite process orientated or quite good at planning? Because you seem like someone that's extremely full of passion and life. Were you always quite
Yeah,
process orientated?
yeah, I'd say absolutely not.
Really?
I wasn't that person, but I know exactly the turning point. The turning
Go
point
on.
was that I was doing a dual desk, so I was doing both temp contract and perm recruitment. I was managing three teams, about 19 individuals. I also was a board director, so I had those responsibilities. And at that point, I know it's hard to believe now, I had some hair, and I was tearing it out and thinking, this is ridiculous because I also like to have a social life as well. And it was just, the
Yeah.
whole thing was just becoming too much. So I just sat down in the dark and said, right, what am I going to do about this? So that's why I came up with my own version of time management, which is what I still do today. And I coach and mentor loads of business
Mm,
owners, senior managers, and million-pound billers on how to use this process. I still literally use it today. I sit across all these boards. I do these sorts of things. If I don't
mhm,
do it, my life would just be crazy and too
mm,
anarchic to deal with. So it then put me down that path. So I knew that there was a challenge. I had to
mm,
resolve it. I resolved it. I trialed it. I refined it. I measured it until I came up with the process that come up today, which
mm.
it must work because otherwise, A, I wouldn't still be doing it, and B, as
Yeah.
effective as I am, but also other people wouldn't be taking on board those ideas that I've shown them.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know what we were speaking about earlier about like the behaviors and stuff of the top performers, and one of which is like a maniacal level of focus. Imagine telling a 20-year-old that to be successful in recruitment, you have to have incredible levels of focus when that
Mm,
person clearly demonstrated signs of ADHD and they were
yeah,
undiagnosed. It's like telling a paraplegic grow a pair of legs and run. Uh,
yeah.
levels of focus when I was in my 20s were virtually non-existent. So trying to focus and be like the top billers in the room was always really, really hard. And when I got into L&D, that's kind of like my turning point when it came to like being more process orientated, because I realized that coaching and training people with no experience in recruitment to be successful is you cannot have a sustainable, scalable training philosophy by doing it how I learned in recruitment, which was here's a book of 2,000 contacts, call as many as you can and just wing it, which is how I was successful in my first few years of recruitment. You
Mm,
cannot then train hundreds of recruiters by saying be really driven, passionate, and
mm,
hardworking and make as many calls and fuck up as much as you can and you'll be
yeah.
successful. You just can't work. So I had to learn, and it was fucking hard. But I had to learn to be more process orientated, how to plan and how to be a little bit more analytical and all those types of things. It's still a work in progress though. Absolutely. Well, look, Alex, I'm conscious of time, but as you know, we finish every episode with the same question, which is following today's episode. And by the way, you've given us a heck of a lot of nuggets, and I think that part two, there'll be loads more nuggets as well. But following this particular episode, how can viewers and listeners get 1% better in recruitment? Love it. Well, I fairly recently just wrote down my goals for 2025, my plan of action, how I'm going to achieve those goals. And normally what I do is a similar type of thing where I can't remember what it's actually called, but you draw a circle and there's different points on the circle of like your finances, your relationships, etc. And it's like a level 1 to 10. And you
Yeah,
can't give yourself seven. And I've done
yeah.
that for quite a few years. It's very, very similar, but I'm actually going to trial the personal SWOT analysis. I bought my own new really cool looking like notebook for like my goals and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to do that. So
Good.
yeah, it's been awesome, Alex. I really, really appreciate your time today. For people to reach out to you, what firstly, who would like listening to this? What types of people should reach out to you, and then how can they get out and reach out to you? Wonderful. Again, Alex, thank you very much for your time today. And for anyone that's got this far in the episode, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. The newsletter as well, you get if you go and read the newsletter, you get the synopsis on all the episodes. If you've missed any, the answers to the final questions of every episode. Hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll be past the 2,000 subscriber mark because we're like nearly at 1,500 on the newsletter. But thank you very much, everyone. And until next time.